term that we wanted people to be aware of called griefism, and it's prejudice against people who are bereaved, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
your loved one dies and you get 3 days, or maybe they give you a week, but you better take it now,
Mhm.
when really you need to take it a month from now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How really this prejudice against people who are bereaved is built into our society. So we wrote a whole 10-page article on it,
Wow.
and it I think really resonated with a lot of people.
We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death, there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
Greetings, fellow listeners, those on the sacred path of living. This is the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz, here to share some time with our new friend, Dr. Bob Baugher. On this episode, we are so delighted to get to know Dr. Bob. He's a retired psychology professor from Highline College in Des Moines, Washington, where he taught courses in death education, suicide intervention, understanding AIDS, intro to psych, and human relations. He is the co-author of 8 books and more than 150 articles on grief-related topics. Bob has given several hundred workshops on coping with grief during the past 30 years.
Wow, so good to have you with us. I was
Thank
really honored to meet you, and when you were the speaker, we had an inauguration of a wind phone in a local cemetery. In case you aren't aware, wind phones are something that's been around for a while now. I think they've said there's like 800 of them around the world. We actually did an episode on that. If you go to season 3, episode
3.
11
Mhm.
with Russell Young, he had installed one at his local church, and we got to talk to him about it. And you can go there and learn a lot more about it. But Bob did a great job of speaking to the importance of this kind of an idea, a way for us to communicate, sit down and talk on a telephone with our loved ones who've passed. Um, it was a beautiful project of a friend of ours, Pamela Bellier, who is the creator of the Grievers Library, and you can learn more about her in another episode. It was also season 3, episode 17. So, Bob, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
We like to kind of check in with folks and find out when you first became aware of death.
Wow.
Hmm.
I got Yeah, I got a great story about this. I grew up in Seattle, and, Beacon Hill, and a bunch of us kids were playing. I was 6 years old, we were playing in the woods, and this cat either had died or kinda stumbled in and died in front of us, and we buried the cat. So, like, a couple months later, we're playing in that same area of the woods, and one of the kids who hadn't been there when the cat died started digging up around the area where the cat was. And we said, "No, no, don't do that. That's where we buried that cat." And all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, wait a minute. Look, there's some of the cat right there." We had these sticks and we started digging it, and we pried the cat out, and it was like cardboard.
Mm,
And I
Yeah.
always I always thought, something dies and it just remains the same, and that was my first hint
Mhm.
as, no, this cardboard looking cat didn't stay the same. So that was
yeah,
a long time ago.
something changes for sure.
Yes, fascinating. And it's still there, kind of, right?
Yeah.
So, Bob, so that was the formative moment when you understood that death is happening. How has death impacted the story of your life? Where has it been?
Well, I'm just putting together a whole thing on, Instagram, and I was typing up earlier today the story of when it all started for me on getting involved in death. February 4th, 1975. I always
Hmm.
get this. This is the first thing I say to my students in the death class.
Mm.
And then I point to a student and I say, "So where were you in 19?" And their eyes are like, "No, I wasn't even." So I got this. So I answered the phone, and my mother was yelling and screaming and crying. She said, "Your father's in the hospital. He's dying." Now, my
Mm.
dad was 52 years old, a workaholic, never had time to be sick, and here he was, like, dying. Like what? So I jumped in my car, headed to Harborview Hospital. Got there. Here's my mom there with my two brothers who were in their 20s and my sisters who were teenagers. And my mother gestured over, and I look over. There's my dad lying in a gurney, chaos at Harborview Hospital, people
Mm.
running around. And they were able to stabilize him, but he apparently had at that point, we didn't know for sure, a massive stroke. And
Mhm.
his whole left side was paralyzed, and they thought he might die. And so that night, when he was stabilized, my mother said to me, "Will you see about setting up a funeral for your father tomorrow,
Well,
or for your father at some point. Go there tomorrow." I said, "Okay." So here I am. I'm almost 30 years old. All my cousins and aunts and uncles were alive. I I hadn't been touched by death, and I'm driving to this funeral home. I'm saying to myself, I don't know much about death, loss, grief, let
Mm.
alone how to set up a funeral. So I
Mhm,
talked to the
mhm.
guy. He was in West Seattle, and he was nice about it. And as it was, my dad came out of a coma after a month, had to learn how to walk again, and ended up living with the stroke, of course, another 28 years. He died.
wow.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, living longer than some of the doctors who said he may not make it.
Right.
Yeah.
And, so then now fast forward several months, and I'm in my office back then teaching part-time at Seattle Central Community College, and there's a knock on my door, and this woman says, "Hey, I'm on a committee, and we're giving money grants for people who wanna create a new class." And I said, "Well, I'm part-time here." She said, "No, no, it's open to anybody, write a proposal." So I did for teaching a class on death. She got back to me and said, "So the committee is really interested. How much, money do you want for this grant?" Now, I had just started teaching. I was so naive, and I said, "I don't know, how about, like, $400?"
Oh my gosh.
She kinda smiled and
Oof.
said, "Okay," and then the committee back said, "Yeah, we accept." And that summer, 1976, I earned about 50 cents an hour, putting together this class and so on. And so then they said, "Okay, we're gonna offer the class January 1977." About a month before that, they said, "We're sorry, we left your class out of the quarterly." Oh, great. Back then it wasn't online, it was all paper. And they said, "We're gonna pass out a bunch of flyers, and we'll see how the class goes." So now it's January '77. I walk into my classroom, it's a Wednesday night, there's nobody there.
Uh-oh.
I'm thinking, "Great. Here I did all this work on, putting together this class." And then this woman comes walking in, and she goes, "Oh, your classroom's been moved down the hall." I go to Yeah, I go down the hall, 40 people are sitting there.
Wow.
Whoa.
That was
Wow.
Woo.
it. That
Wow.
started me on my whole career of teaching and getting involved in,
Oh,
helping
wow.
people with grief and loss and so on. That's my story.
Mm. Oh, beautiful.
That
Wow.
is amazing.
That's great. Yeah, I was thinking, 50 cents an hour is kind of what most, professors, adjunct professors make, I think, actually.
Yes.
That's probably a pretty good wage.
Yeah. That's why I said $400 because
Yeah.
it was about half of what I got for teaching a whole class.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, the other thing that was funny that I thought when you were talking about your dad was it was sort of forced pre-planning, right? We always talk to people about planning ahead.
That's right.
So this kinda made you plan ahead whether you wanted to or not. So
Yes.
Mhm.
when the time actually came, maybe you had a better idea of what you were doing, probably
Oh,
by
I
then, for sure.
decided for the funeral, we had it all down.
Right, right. Very good, very good. Well, thank you. So yeah, tell us more about the teaching role that you had and maybe what you're doing currently, um, your work as a teacher, and then as, what's keeping you busy in your retirement years?
Well, very busy. I retired 2 years ago after teaching, 50 years. My first class I ever taught was 1973, and my last one was 2023.
Mm,
And,
Wow.
but I have this whole list of things that I've been doing and involved, with the local widows group. They had their 50th anniversary a couple of years ago, so I was involved in that, and I'm also involved with the local chapter of the Compassionate Friends, parents who've lost a child, and so they have me doing a lot of things as well, and I've learned so much from both those groups over the years.
Mhm.
I just got an article published, co-authored with a sociology professor, um, Dr. Hilliker at uh, Michigan State. Basically focuses on a term that we wanted people to be aware of called griefism,
Mhm.
Mm,
and it's prejudice against people who are bereaved,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
your loved one dies and you get 3 days, or maybe they
mhm,
give you a week, but you better take it now,
mhm,
when really you need to take it a month from now.
Yeah.
mhm,
How really, um, this prejudice against people who are bereaved is built into our society. So we wrote a whole 10-page article on it,
huh,
Wow.
and it I think really resonated with a lot of people, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of it. And of
mhm,
course, I learned that from bereaved people themselves who they're
Yeah.
in the grocery store, their child died, 6 months ago, and they look over and they see a neighbor, and their neighbor's gone. Right? They don't want to
Mm.
right.
Mhm.
all the
Yeah.
cliches that people say to them. And, in
Yeah.
movies, we don't see grief very, the
Mhm.
heroine's, you know, boyfriend dies and she cries a little bit and then we never hear about her grief again. She,
Right. There's a cutaway, right? There's a
yeah,
cutaway
Mhm.
to, like, a year later, like,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
she's happy,
yeah,
she's doing great.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
That's actually a very real thing that I've just recently experienced through a friend of mine who had a sibling who committed suicide, and this was, like, 2 years ago, and she just recently told me that in 2 years, she had never been told, like, she could take time off for grief, like,
Wow.
and the company actually has a grief and bereavement, like, time that she could take off, but she was never offered this,
yeah,
Hmm.
ever, and she's
Wow.
like and it's the same boss that she's had for, 5, 10 years, whatever, and she's like, "He knew how hard this was, and he kept it shut, like, he did not want me, like, taking time off." She's like, "I took all my PTO during this time whenever I had to, like, just
Mhm.
sit down and cry," and I was like, "How horrible."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
yeah,
It's devastating that so many people in this world are probably going through this, in our culture for sure.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll definitely put a link to that article for you in the notes so
Yeah,
folks can get to it. That's
yeah,
great. Yeah, you told me a little bit about that when we met, and I've been thinking about that a lot since then. And certainly, we see evidence of this a
Mhm,
lot in our culture, and
mhm.
it's a problem, which is why we're here.
yeah,
It's why we're
exactly.
doing this.
Good for
Yeah.
you. Good for you to be
Yeah.
here to
Yeah.
open people's eyes and getting them to think and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a couple other projects. I'm co-authoring a book on the overdose death of a child.
Mm.
A
Mm,
mom had contacted me a couple years ago. She read my book on coping with guilt during bereavement, and
mm,
she contacted me and said my 19-year-old son had died a couple years before that, and we parents have huge amounts of guilt.
Yeah.
So we wrote a
mhm,
book. We're
mm,
we're almost done with it. We had 30 parents who themselves had experienced the death of a child through overdose to contribute to the book, and
Mm.
it's really, I think, going to be helpful to a lot of people because it validates a lot of what people are going through. And it doesn't matter, yeah, how this child died, but especially if an overdose, all the rehab issues and the
yeah.
lying and cheating and stealing, and in some cases you don't know that your child was using, and in other cases you do, and all the craziness that goes along with that. So we're looking hopefully in the next year or so to get that published, and then
Great.
another
Mhm,
book is a friend of mine who actually went to high school with my wife, and I met him through my wife. And he's one of these people, maybe you experienced this, that in 5 minutes we clicked just like that. Yeah.
mhm,
And
Yeah.
it name's Eddie. And so now, fast forward, 30 some years later, he's um, dying with a form of Lou Gehrig's disease. Lou
Mhm.
Gehrig's disease is ALS. What he was dying from was PLS, and he came to live with us. So I took care of him for a month, 24 hours a day. We found a group home for him and so on. And then a year later, he died. But in the meantime, I wrote a book about it. And,
Mm.
we loved this man and he loved us. And to watch him day after day want to die. He was 49 years old
Mm,
when he died. This is
Wow.
many years ago. So I'm looking to get that book published.
mhm.
I've sent it off to 19 book publishers, and that was 3 months ago. And I got rejected by 5 so far, but one.
It
So
just takes one, yeah.
yeah, cross fingers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
that's
that's kind of what those are some of the projects that I've been working on. Right? So
that's
That's
so
cool.
wonderful. Thank you for sharing those. I'm really looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing those get posted and sharing them with our audience too. Such
Yeah.
important work.
It is important work and it's rich work that you're doing, rich
Yeah.
and, I'm sure you get to like us, like, get to connect with a lot of people with really deep, meaningful stories, and, I love that you find these parts, bereavement and coping with guilt, like, those are topics we don't really talk about when we think about how do we grieve, right? So, what are some of the challenges that you find when you're working on these different projects with these different folks? What do you feel like you come home and you're like, "This is an issue?"
yeah, I when I first started in this, I thought that I would take home the pain that I
Mm,
experienced when I was going through tenure. The committee looks at what you're doing and how you're teaching and so on. And so they said to me back then in the 1988, they said, "You're working with people who have traumatic brain injury. You're working with people who's death of a child. You're working with people who've lost a spouse." You know,
mhm.
and I'm saying, "Yeah." And then I saw worried looks on their faces, like, "Oh my goodness, is this guy? We just hired this guy. Is he going to make it?" So I quickly jumped up and said, "Well, look, I run 3 times a week. I have a healthy marriage. My wife supports me. I have 2 kids who are
Mhm,
doing okay," and so on, and, you know, they began to breathe a little bit and, "Okay, this guy's gonna make it."
mhm,
But I feel fortunate in that, I can hear people's stories and feel that, I can find some ways in some cases to help them out and yet
mhm,
not
mhm,
take it home with me
mhm,
as well. I've experienced my own losses, my mother and father, and my a couple of years ago, my niece at 35 years old died, and so I feel very very fortunate to be able to get back up again and help people.
Mhm,
mhm.
mhm. That's great.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, I love that. And getting out and running, yeah, that's I don't run, but I walk.
Good.
I'm a little slower.
Yeah, I'm running slower now. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But I feel like that's yeah, for me, that's also one of the ways that I can just settle in and go sit
Mhm,
down by a creek or something if I need to. So thank you for sharing that. That's
mhm,
again, we always like to ask that question because people need to know there's a lot of ways to resource yourself, and it's really
mhm,
important to pay attention to that and not just blow through it like you're some Superman because we none of us really are.
Mhm. Right. You're
Yeah,
right.
so that's great. Is there anything that frightens you as you've been working in this world of death and dying for this many years? Is there anything that frightens you about the end of life?
Oh, about the end of life?
Yeah.
No, I give out a, death anxiety survey to my students, and then I, you know, look at it myself. So there's like 16
mhm,
different things that people would be fearful about death,
Mhm.
dying in pain, dying a violent
mhm,
death, um, dying without finishing, important things
mhm,
in life. And the one that keeps coming up for me, which I know is for a lot of people, is um, the, the thing that I'm concerned about is leaving my wife.
Mhm.
This woman, by the way, what's today, the 25th? 4 days ago was the 60th anniversary of our first date.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, we were married 4 years later, but, I posted it on, Facebook and got a bunch of likes and all that. But this poor woman in a way who's, ended up marrying a guy. She married a guy who was a cashier at a grocery store. Married. We were talking about that last night. And so I went on and she supported me all the way through my education and all this and my career. And so once in a while we'll be in the kitchen and we'll look into each other's eyes and one of us will say, "I wonder who's going to go first." And when I tell my students that, they go, "Oh," I go, "No, no." It makes that
Ah,
moment more important, right? That we do
mhm.
Yeah,
have each other. And she
yeah.
always says against me because she wants to be cremated. I'm not a big fan of being cremated, but she said, "Well, buddy, if you go first, you're gonna get burned." Right.
Oh my gosh, I love you. I love you too. It sounds like the conversations in my home.
Really great. Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. Talk about death. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
my students
Oh.
in my death class will come back and say, "So last night, we were eating dinner and I said to my parents, 'What kind of funeral do you want?'" And I said, "We can talk about that." "Oh, it's a death class you're taking. We don't wanna talk about death."
Oh.
Yeah. So, again, good for you guys to
Yeah, yeah.
be doing this stuff because we need it, you know?
We
Our
We
do.
society is
do.
not still not ready for it. When I
Yeah.
first started, the death class years ago, back in the '70s and '80s, I thought, by the time we get to year 2000, we'll have death education in every high school, maybe
Mhm.
even
Mhm.
grade school. They'll be talking about it in, we all
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened.
No.
Hasn't
That's
happened.
right.
Still reluctant. Can't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you're doing that and that, that people are starting to think about it. It's starting to grow. We're seeing a little bit of growth in the discussion anyway, and this kind of thing helps a lot. And the classes
Mhm.
that you were doing and other places and the doulas that are out there now talking to people and um, teachers that are doing classes. And so, yeah, as you said, it's something that needs to happen and people need to think about it and plan for it. The more you planning you can
Mhm.
do and helping, and I love that you're having this conversation with your wife, and Luis and I are having that conversation with our families as well. And Aunt Luis always says she doesn't get invited back to dinner parties sometimes because
I don't, because 'cause I'm the one who will be at a dinner party and, "Well, what do you do or what do you like to" I'm like, "Oh, death and dying," ah, and people are like, "Oh."
right,
Yeah. When I first started teaching the deaf class, I was at Seattle Central where they have a deaf program. And so when they said, "So what class you're teaching?" I said, "Oh, deaf and dying." "Oh, deaf and dying?" "No, death, death, death." Once
Yeah.
in a while, on the first day of
Yeah.
class, a lost student will come to my class and open the door and they'll say, "What class is this?" And I'll say, "It's a class on death." Boy, they're out of there quick.
Yeah.
Laughing like, "Oh, no, we don't wanna
Oh,
deal
no,
with
thank
that."
you.
So, yeah.
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 No,
Have
it's
you found in your work,
fun.
with younger people that they are less willing to talk about it, or are they beginning to be more
People ask me in general, compared to 50 years ago, what are the students today? And, the students I get, of course, are self-selected. They wanna sign up
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
class on death. Some of them have taken other classes from me and say, "Well, I've taken this guy, before, it must be a good class." And it hasn't changed much.
Hmm.
They are as willing to talk
Mhm.
about it as before. The only thing that I find mainly different is before class, rather than them talking to each other, they're on their phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the big change that I've seen. But once they get started, they are as eager and willing to do the homework. I give them some pretty
Mhm.
heavy homework assignments. One of them I give is called a deathbed fantasy, where
Mm,
they
Mhm.
are required to imagine that they are on their deathbed with 20 minutes to live at the
Ah.
age they are now. And they
Mhm.
are then asked to put who, who do they want there? List
yeah.
all the people they want there. Who do they not want there? And what would they say to the entire group? And then what would they say to each person one at a time?
Oh,
Wow.
so beautiful.
Yeah. And one of the things I say to them is, "So here's your best friend standing at your deathbed. I
Mhm.
want you to say more than, 'Hey man, it's been cool. Later.' I all the things that you did with your best friend and are you gonna
Mhm.
tell him that you love him and so on?" And um,
Mhm.
so that's just one of the assignments, and I tell them ahead of time, this has about a 50% tear rate. About half of the students who do this assignment cry. So if you
Yeah.
have
Mhm.
tears on the paper that you submit, I'll give you extra keep credit.
It's great that I forgot about this because when I volunteered for Denver Hospice, we had that as part of our training, and
Mm.
we had to write it down, imagine your death, who's in the room, what's going on, and, I mean, I did that, like, 15 years ago, and that story that I wrote in that hour is the story that I consistently tell my kids
Mhm.
to remember, "This is how I want to die. This is where I want to be. This is how I wanted to,"
Mhm.
like, so it's become like this, like, ritual poem that I tell them all the time, right? So because it's so important, like, that is what I want, and
Yeah,
so
yeah. Well, I love that, it's one of the things in, like, the class I do on end of life planning that I talk about a little bit, think about those things, but also I love the idea of maybe adding to the class, take some time and write this down, and
Mhm,
just like you made it an assignment. This is an assignment
mhm,
for between now and our
mhm,
next class,
mhm.
start
Yeah.
just write this up and think about this. And the one thing you said too, which I have found we found is very important, is who don't you want to be there?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, right?
That's
'Cause
right. And at first I said, "Well, everyone should," and then my students started saying, "No, there's some people I don't want to be
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
there."
Yeah, that often comes up. Well, do you have any other great examples of assignments that you give?
Yeah,
Those are
yeah. Here's a good one. This happened about 20 years ago. I was at a friend of mine's house for a Christmas party, and I had a Santa Claus outfit. So I went in the other room, changed into Santa Claus. Everyone's taking pictures. So later on, I changed back, and this woman comes up to me and said, "You don't know me, but my sister and my mother took your death class about 5 years ago." And she said, "In fact, while I was sitting on your knee, I texted my sister and said, you won't believe whose lap I'm sitting on, your professor." Said, "So our mother
Oh,
died a couple years ago, and we're sitting there going, what kind of funeral do we want?" And my sister goes, "Wait a minute, mom and I took that death class." And they went into her stuff, and one of the assignments is, "What do you want for your funeral?" And they
Mhm.
were able to pull out that piece.
oh,
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Great.
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. As you
you have
said,
done great work in this world. I love
yeah,
this.
yeah.
yeah, I felt very fortunate. Yeah.
Well, and as you said, it should be required,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
classes and for everybody and
Another
yeah.
another assignment they have is they have to go to a funeral home.
Mhm.
And, and I say, "All you have to do is walk in, ask for a pamphlet, and leave," Don't expect a tour. If you want a tour of a funeral home, you call ahead of time and ask for a tour because quite often they're busy, you don't know, someone just died or whatever. And then later on in the quarter, we as a class go on a tour of a funeral home. And I say, "If you bring someone with you, you'll get a 1 point bonus." And yeah, and so it's very powerful. Here we are in the casket selection room, and here's this student, 20-year-old student with her mother and father, and as they
Mm,
Ah,
say, "What kind of casket do you want?"
yeah,
Father goes, "I kinda like that." I mean, powerful stuff.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Oh,
great. Yeah, yeah.
so
Another
cool.
Another one, to go to a cemetery,
oh,
and
yeah.
years ago, I had them do a rubbing, but now
Mhm.
everyone's got a phone, so I say, "I want you to go to the cemetery, find your favorite tombstone, and take a selfie," and I get these pictures of them in front of some tombstone or whatever.
I love
I
that.
got a quick story with this one. A student came up to me when she heard the assignment and said, "I am so afraid of going to a cemetery. I wanna go. I know it's important to go there." And I said, "I'll tell you what," she's a woman in her 30s or so. I said, "I'll tell you what, how about if I go with you sometime?" She goes,
Mm.
"Really? Yes, I'll do that." So we go to the cemetery, we walk around, I take a couple pictures of her. She completes the assignment, and as we're driving back, she says to me, "You know one of the things that I do, I have a talent." She says, "I put makeup on dead bodies." I go, "What?" She goes, "Yes, I'm very good at makeup. They bring me a picture and so on. Sometimes they pay me and sometimes I just do it." I said, "You're afraid to go into a cemetery. You can do this?" She's laughing like, "Yeah, true story."
That's really
That
funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
is
Yeah, so interesting what people fear. Uh, so yeah, we always like to give everybody a chance at the end to just tell us if there's anything you wish we had asked you about. Any other stories you'd
Oh,
like to share?
that's a good question. No, I love the question, "How do you do this?"
Mhm.
And, um, um, I do have this good support system, especially with my wife to, listen to me talk about, some of the tough issues and sometimes cry because, you realize that, people hurt. Oh, I
Yeah.
do have a website. It's my name, www.bobbauer.com. They can go on there. And as you mentioned, I've written more than 150 articles related to grief and loss. I get a email from, one of the parents whose children have died and said, last night at our meeting, we talked about hatred because some of the people, their loved one was murdered or whatever. And so
Mm.
we thought, hey, let's call Dr. Bob and have him write an article on hate. So a
Wow.
lot of these articles that I've written are
Mm.
ideas that, people have said, and all my articles are like 2 pages, and people are welcome to download them and use them for any way that they want. So
Oh, that's great.
Mm.
Thank
that's
you. Yeah.
Wow.
We'll
that's all.
definitely have a link in the show notes
Mhm.
so people can get to that. So that's excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bob, if that's the right way to, if
That's fine.
that's the way you prefer.
Yeah.
It's been a great pleasure getting to meet you. And
Yes.
we are looking forward to what's coming next. We have more wonderful guests next week. So I hope everybody will tune in for that. And so, what about this poem? Let's see if I've got it here.
Yes. I've
I've
got it
got
here in
it.
front of me.
Yeah. Do you want to
Yep.
read it? Or
Sure.
maybe sometimes we read them twice because they're so cool. So maybe we'll do
This was a poem. I'm not a big poet. My daughter is, but she was impressed. "Hey, Dad, you wrote a poem."
that.
This is when my mother was dying,
Oh.
Mhm.
in, May of 1991. She was 67 years old. She was in her bedroom, dying of cancer, and, my dad was it was starting to sink in that his wife, the dad who had the stroke, that his wife was gonna go. So,
Mm, mm. Yeah, thank you
Mm.
for setting that up like that. That really sets the
Mhm.
scene. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this is by Bob Baugher, and it's called Staying and Leaving. Just staying, leaving. I watch him across from me at the dining room table as he contentedly chews red sauced spaghetti. Suddenly, with fork in midair, his stroke worn face freezes unblinkingly. Long saliva strands drip from lip to spaghetti plate below, tears well and silent screams from grief parched throat. In bedroom down, rug worn hall lay his wife, my mother, fading from his desperate grasp, her face frozen, no saliva, no tears, no scream, her pain ending his, just beginning.
Hmm. Yeah,
geez, that even gets me to hear that again.
it's so well written, so beautiful.
Mm,
Yeah, and her face frozen, no saliva, no tears, no
no
scream.
scream.
Her pain ending, his
His.
just beginning.
I got a quick story on that. A couple months after, my mom died, my dad for years, had been coming with me to go teach at Highline once, twice a week. So we're driving along, and I say, "Dad, you're a widower." His mother died when he was 6. I said, "You're a widower like your dad." I've have you ever thought about getting married again? He said, "No, no, not really." In the meantime, I had taken over all his finances and all that, and I see him more often after my mom died. And he said, "No, I don't think I wanna get married again." Then he brightened up and he said, "Besides, I already feel like I am married." I go, "What do you mean?" He says, "I feel like I'm married to you." Oh, we had a big laugh about it.
That's great. Yeah, there you
Oh
go.
my gosh.
Yeah, substitute
Oh,
substitute
that's
wife. I
so
love it.
oh,
Yeah,
that's so funny.
yeah.
Oh, I like your dad.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and you, and your wife, and your mom for that matter.
I
Thank
love
you so much, Bob. I really appreciate you
well,
joining us today. I really,
Yes.
all the work you're doing is incredible and wonderful, and I'm looking forward
Mhm.
to checking out the website, and our audience
Yes.
will be doing so as well.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much too. You're a delightful prof.
yeah,
I like
yeah.
that. I
thanks.
wanna go to school again.
Yeah, it's really a compliment when people hear some of the things they say. I want to take your class, you know?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. All right. Well, take care. Thank you
All
so
right. You
much.
Thank
too.
you so
Bye-bye.
much.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Please stick around after the credits for our afterthoughts, and it helps our numbers if you stay until the end. We want to thank my children, Nate, Vivian, Nina, and her fiance Asher, for the excellent opening song, and a special thanks to our awesome editor, Sam Zemke, who is also a guest on our podcast. You can listen to him on Season 4, Episode 5. Also, thank you to Charles Heaston, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end-of-life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you. Again, why can't he be my neighbor?
Yeah,
I
it
want
never
to.
fails.
I know. I really just enjoy his voice and the life that he
Yeah,
has
yeah.
in sharing death and dying bits for so many of people.
Yeah, such a radiance and presence and gift that he
Mhm.
gives to all his students and all the people that he's met and the people that he continues to work with. He's still working with people, helping out and being there, and the
That's right.
articles he's written. And so, wow, thank God for people like him. I'm looking forward to meeting more people next week. So,
Yes,
uh,
may the goddess bless his journey so that we
yeah,
can
yeah,
get
yeah,
more of his wisdom out in the world.
and ours as well.